Hi, I'm Sam from Mower Magic. I've worked for this company for approaching 7 years now, and for a lot of that time, I've worked closely with robotic lawnmowers. The bulk of my experience is with Ambrogio and now Mammotion, but I have worked with Robomo in the past as well. So today, I'm going to answer a lot of the common questions we get asked about robot lawnmowers in general. So while I will try and give general answers to things, it may be that I'm talking about something that's specific to one brand or another. I'll try and be specific when that is the case. But yeah, so that's my experience, and those are the brands that I know best. So we've got a list of questions here today that I'll just work through now. Will a robot lawnmower cut all my lawn in one go? Well, that's a really easy question, and the answer is almost certainly no. Any robot lawnmower, when you look at it, it's going to be defined by an area it can cover. 1,000 square meters, 500, 5,000, 10,000. What that generally is the manufacturer saying this is the amount of area that the lawnmower can cover, usually within a week. It's going to depend model to model, manufacturer to manufacturer. In a lot of cases, it's what it can cover in a couple of days. But generally speaking, when you buy a robot lawnmower and the robot lawnmower on its specification says this will cover 1,000 square meters, unless that figure is specifically what it's covering in a single charge, that's generally going to be the amount of area that it can manage, and it's going to go out to its schedule and cut the lawn little and often. Now, how efficiently it covers the area, that is sort of down to what kind of robot you're going for. So if you go for a robot with a perimeter wire, they will mow semi-randomly. They go in a straight line until they encounter an obstacle or the perimeter, and then the onboard algorithm lets them choose acute or obtuse angle, and then they sort of continue going to that. The analogy I always use for people to sort of help imagine it is if you think of like an Etch-a-Sketch, if you sort of turn the knobs on it, they will eventually fill up the whole of the area, and that's the same kind of thing. So the mower's moving semi-randomly, and eventually it will cover all of that. With a robot that uses RTK, that kind of GPS positioning, is a lot more methodical. The mower is going to usually be able to go up and down in straight lines or diagonal lines, whatever you set it to, and it's going to cover, and it's going to know where it's been, and then when it goes to charge and goes back out, it's going to continue from that point and keep on going. So there's a lot less randomness at play, and usually you can have a much better idea of exactly how long it's going to take to cover your area. But to answer the question, generally speaking, no, a robot lawnmower isn't going to go out and cut your lawn in one go. And honestly, it's better for it that it doesn't, because it means that you're not cutting back a long length of grass like you would with a traditional lawnmower. The lawn is being managed and kept at the length you want it to be. So it's always freshly cut, and the machine's only taking off a couple of millimeters each time. What happens with my robot lawnmower when it rains? Most robot lawnmowers, if not all of them, will have some kind of rain sensor on them. The rain sensor on a robot lawnmower is generally a very, very simple system. You can see it here on this Ambrogio one, but it's the same on virtually every robot lawnmower that I've seen anyway. You've got two metal points, and if they're bridged by water, the robot detects, it's raining, and then depending on what your settings with it, it depends on how it's going to behave there. Most machines by default will have it turned on that they will go home when it's raining, or they won't depart their charging station when it's raining, and then they'll just wait until the next available point in their schedule, then they'll go out and mow. A lot of the machines you can override that setting, so you can turn it off and have it mow anyway, but honestly, unless you're getting consistent downpours for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the robot can't go out and mow at all, it's better to let the robot mow when it's dry. This goes for any lawn mowing, to be honest. Mowing damp grass is always more difficult. You're going to get better cut performance and better finish with dry grass. But generally, I would say leave your rain sensor on, let the mower not work when it's wet, and then get it out when it's dry. What's the narrowest area that a robot lawnmower can mow? This is something that's going to come down to individual specifications, but as a general rule of thumb, you don't want a passage to be mown that is less than a metre. This is for a couple of reasons. So on a robot that uses a perimeter wire, there is a minimum distance that the wire can be from a wall or a border edge, and then combined with that, there'll be a minimum distance that the wires can be from each other, so that the wire signal that they're transmitting doesn't interfere with each other. And that's generally a meter. On some larger models, it might be more. That's something to look up in the specification of the machine. But if you've got a narrow strip that is a meter or less, it's something that you should really ask of the manufacturer or a dealer to see if they've had that kind of situation. But a meter or more, usually fine. Again, with a wireless robot, it'll be within the machine specification. If you've got long narrow strips of a meter or more, that should generally be fine. There will be, however, in the user manual of almost any robot lawnmower, a specification of the minimum it can go. And I really wouldn't recommend trying to do something out of specification, because what you'll end up with is something that you've bought to automate your mowing process that actually means you're going to have to intervene with it a lot better. So when you're planning out something to automate your lawn, or you're planning a lawn layout with a robot lawnmower in mind, pay attention to the specifications given by the manufacturer, because otherwise you might set yourself up for disappointment. Do I need internet signal for my robot to work? And that's Wi-Fi or 4G. It kind of depends on what you define by work. So most models of robot lawnmower, whether they be a traditional sort of perimeter wire lawnmower that mows semi-randomly within that perimeter, or a more modern robot that uses RTK positioning and doesn't need a perimeter wire, most of them you will need internet access to connect to the machine remotely. So almost all these robots, you'll be able to connect to them via Bluetooth with your phone, but some will have inbuilt GSM or Wi-Fi receivers, so you'll be able to connect to them from anywhere. Of course, that requires an internet signal of some kind. It's going to depend on what model you have, whether that's through 4G or through Wi-Fi. Certainly with Ambrogio, most of the models have an inbuilt SIM card, an eSIM that you'll be able to connect to the machine remotely with, but that does require a payment of data, and that's yearly, and that's through the app. Mammotion, on the other hand, has a Wi-Fi receiver, so you can connect that to your home Wi-Fi to see that remotely. And they do come with some 4G data as well, again on an inbuilt SIM, and renewing that data is through the app. But you've got two options there, Wi-Fi and 4G. But to work, to do the base task of mowing your lawn, it does depend. With either of these brands, no. So again, the Ambrogio, most of their robots are they're working semi-randomly within a boundary wire perimeter, and to do that, no internet connection is required. And Mammotion, again, they use RTK positioning. Now, mowers that use RTK, it actually depends on the manufacturer, because on some RTK machines, you will need an internet connection. Not necessarily Wi-Fi, but often the communication between the RTK reference station and the robot is done over a mobile data connection. That's not true of all brands, and it's worth sort of researching what kind of connectivity you need for any given robot if you're looking to invest in one. But for the Mammotion machines, that communication between the robot and the reference station is by radio. So actually, for the day-to-day operation, no internet connection is required. What happens to the grass when my robot mower cuts the lawn? That's quite simple. The grass clippings go back in the lawn. Now, you might think, oh, I don't want grass clippings all over my lawn. The key difference is that these robots, they're designed to only cut off a couple of millimetres at a time. Those micro clippings are so small that they're going to fall back into the grass underneath the blades of grass that are currently growing, so you won't really see them. And they're going to renutriate the lawn. So you're not taking any moisture away, you're not taking any nutrients away. So when it's summer and there's not been rain for a while, your lawn should stay greener and lusher for longer. It's not exactly the same as mulching, because mulching on a traditional petrol lawnmower, generally speaking, the lift force of the blade is going to keep the clippings in the cutting deck longer and cut them up even smaller. It's a slightly different action on the robots, but essentially you're just cutting off the tiniest bit of the lawn and keeping that growth at the same length all the time. Will I need to pay for a subscription of any kind? This is manufacturer dependent, but generally speaking, no. You're not going to have to pay for the ongoing service of your machine cutting the lawn. I think there are a couple of brands that did experiment with that, as like you have like a yearly data subscription. But to my knowledge, anyone who was doing that has actually scrapped that now, because other competitors on the market weren't doing it, so it made theirs a more difficult choice. Certainly with Mammotion, you're not having to pay anything monthly or yearly to get your satellite signal on it. And with Ambrogio, for the machine to work within the perimeter, you're not paying anything. Now, there might be additional services attached to the make and model you've got that would be a subscription service. So again, with Ambrogio, anything that's got a Connect module, so that is using satellite to enhance its navigation and to communicate to your phone, that is something that does have a yearly cost associated with it, and that's something you pay through the app. So you're paying for the data. So there's the same as with your phone contract. You're paying for that kind of data subscription. Again, the same with Mammotion. So you're not having to pay anything subscription-wise for the machine to work, but the eSIM that's in the robot, there is a yearly data fee associated with that. And if you want to have that service, then there would be a recurring payment for that. But these are things that are very optional. Can I control the type of finish that my robot lawnmower leaves on my lawn? It depends on what kind of robot lawnmower you've got, like so many of these questions. A robot that is mowing semi-randomly with a boundary wire, your finish is going to be, I would always describe it as like carpet-like. So the lawn's been cut from multiple directions, and you're getting sort of like a nice sort of same length sea of grass that's sort of nice and lush and well, it's like a carpet-like finish. With a robot that uses RTK navigation and is mowing the lawn in a methodical, linear fashion, usually you can change the setup of how you want it to mow your lawn. So using the Mammotion machines as an example, but similar features will be available in other makes. You can change. It's going to by default cut in straight lines in like a zigzag path. So it's going up and down, like you would with a petrol lawnmower that you're just pushing or that's driving itself along. You can set it up so that it does a second cut, intersecting at 90 degrees. So doing like a chessboard pattern, you can adjust the angle of that line and that impression that it's leaving on your lawn. And what you end up with is a nice traditionally striped lawn. It's not going to be as defined as with a rear roller lawnmower. Those machines are designed to be as heavy as possible, generally with their centre of gravity on the roller, so it pushes down and really gets like that impression left on the lawn, so you've got a long-lasting stripe. But because these robots are going out so often, what you will end up with is, if you have one of these machines and it's mowing the same path each time, it's going to leave that striped impression on the lawn. And leave you with what is close to at least a traditionally striped finish. There are trees in my garden. Will a robot lawnmower work for me? It's not a simple question. So we'll break this into two answers essentially. One, how robot lawnmowers deal with obstacles like trees, and two, how that can affect their general operation. So by and large, a robot lawnmower is going to mow in your garden, and when it encounters a solid obstacle like a tree, depending on what kind of obstacle avoidance system it will have, it will either physically bump into it. Most robot lawnmowers have a bumper, or the whole chassis or the whole shell on the top will move back, and it'll be something like a Hall effect sensor that detects that obstacle or detects that bump event and then moves out of the way. In the case of machines like the Luber or the other Mammotion machines, they might have a vision module. I know that some Crest machines have this as well with their OAS system, where they will actively see the obstacle, and then depending on your settings, they'll either try to avoid it or they'll just slow down and then not get out of the way until they actually bump into it. That's fine for most trees, but I'd say there's two situations where you want to make sure a robot completely avoids a tree. That would be with a really, really young tree that might get damaged by a robot going into it. And when a robot bumps into something, it is gentle, but a very young tree might be damaged by that. The other side of it is if you have a very, very old established tree that's got a lot of overground roots. And overground roots are the kind of obstacle that's the worst kind of thing to have with a robot lawnmower, because it's low enough in the grass that even if the robot has a camera or something like it, it's not going to see it, and it's certainly not going to be tall enough to make contact with the bumper. So in that situation, you would want to delineate that obstacle in some way. Now, with a robot that uses a perimeter wire, you would need to make what's generally referred to as an island. So when you're laying your perimeter, you then, when you get to the obstacle, you come to it, move out to the obstacle, put the wire around it, and take it back, and then go back. And then that's a point that the robot will actively avoid, and then will go around on like a perimeter mow if the machine has that functionality. On a robot that has a virtual boundary, you'll have options to create exclusion zones or no-go zones, whatever the nomenclature is for that in the operating system of the robot. But that will be something similar. So after you've mapped, then you can take the robot to the area you want it to avoid, and then designate an exclusion zone around it. And that means that the robot will avoid it. It won't rely on its obstacle detection to see that. It will just avoid that area. Now, the other side of that question is it going to affect how the robot lawnmower works? That really depends on the type of system that you're using. If you've got a robot that uses a perimeter wire, it's not going to affect it, because that robot isn't looking for any sort of external signal. It's following it's staying inside the boundary that has been created by its wire signal and moving semi-randomly within. If you're using a wireless system that relies on RTK to navigate, trees might affect this. Now, this does vary manufacturer to manufacturer. Some manufacturers can be really, really sensitive, and the satellite receivers can be really, really sensitive to being blocked by even a single tree. But some others have a more robust system. So again, speaking from my experience with Mammotion, a couple of trees is absolutely fine. A tree can cause satellite signal to attenuate, because organic matter is particularly difficult for signal to go through, because the moisture content in it causes the signal to attenuate or disperse, however you want to phrase that. So that's why a lot of leafy trees can potentially cause a problem. So on some machines, you might have a dealer come out and look at it and say it's not possible. Again, my personal experience with the Mammotion robots is a few trees is absolutely fine, but if you've got a really dense canopy that covers the entire area, then it might pose an issue. I would say the best thing to do is contact a local dealer or the distributor or whoever when you're looking at buying one of these machines, and either getting to do a site survey or taking a picture of your lawn. Again, it depends on the model. So I know that the Luba series, actually all the Mammotion robots, if they do lose signal for whatever reason, they can continue working for a distance. From memory, it's about 100 meters until they reacquire that satellite signal. So in a lot of situations where you've just got a few trees, that's going to cover that eventuality. Does the antenna need line of sight to the robot for it to work? This is a question specifically about RTK lawnmowers. I can only really speak from my experience with the Mammotion robots. And in that case, no, it doesn't, because the communication between the robot and the antenna is via LoRa radio. So I can't remember the definition of that acronym. I think it stands for long range, but essentially it is a low frequency, high bandwidth radio signal. It's the same kind of radio signal that a burglar alarm on the side of a house uses, and that's a great example because it demonstrates that signal can penetrate through a building quite well. So that system doesn't need line of sight to the robot. Actually, the most important thing with most RTK antennas is clear view of the sky, because what you're doing is, or what's happening rather, is the antenna is looking for satellite signal, and the robot, or the rover, as the technical RTK specification would refer to it as, so the moving unit, is also looking for satellite signals. And then when the robot and the antenna communicate with each other, It's usually a correction algorithm, so they're comparing the data that they're co-viewing, that they've got from the satellites that they're co-viewing, and then they're using that information to pinpoint where the rover is. That is, it depends on the system, but that is generally to an accuracy of a couple of centimeters. It's not new technology by any means. RTK navigation technology or positioning technology has been around since the 1990s. It's used in site surveillance a lot. It's used in agriculture a lot, and it's something we're seeing a lot more commonly now in the world of robotic lawnmowers. How often do I need to change the blades on my robot lawnmower? It really depends. In this series, essentially, the answer to every single question is it depends. But generally speaking, there are two types of blades that you'll find on a robot lawnmower: a solid blade like this one, or a razor tip blade, or a series of razor tip blades like this one. Now, it's a really, really stark contrast in terms of size. The reality is, in terms of effective cutting area, they're very, very similar. So this is an Ambrogio blade, I think, off of a 29. So your sharpening portion is actually just sort of halfway along the blade here. So actually, if you compare the size of the edges there, it's not really that different. And in any cutting system, pretty much when it comes to lawnmowers, the same with a petrol rotary lawnmower, it's the tips of the blade that are cutting. So those are the sections that get sharpened if you have them in for maintenance and things like that. Now, on to the question at hand: how often do you need to change them? If you've got a solid blade like this, generally speaking, it's going to be once a season. It's not recommended that you sharpen them because it's very difficult to get the balance right, especially when they're so thin, and the motors are working at such high RPM that you don't want it out of balance, because that can make the motion of the motor elliptical rather than circular, and that can over time cause damage to the motor itself. With these, it is something you'd have to maintain a bit more often. So generally speaking, razor blades like this are going to be double-sided. It's going to depend on the machine you have how many are going to be on there, because they're usually mounted to a plastic cutting disc. So you'll have 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe more cutting blades. But they'll be double-sided. So what you can do is, after one side is blunt, turn them all over, and then you get a bit more life out of them. As a general rule of thumb, and this is a generalisation because how long these blades last and how long they stay sharp for is going to be different depending on your lawn conditions. If you've got lots of twigs or stones and things like that blunt the blades faster, it may not be this one. But I would say after about a month, check to see if the cutting edge is really dull. If it is, turn them over. And then after another month, or once you notice that your cut quality severely diminish, then that's time to change your blade. So I would say a full blade change roughly every couple of months. But again, it's something to keep an eye on, because it's something that is your responsibility as an owner of a robot lawnmower. That's part of your general maintenance. Just make sure that they're still sharp and they're still cutting effectively. Can I wash my robot? No, please don't. Please don't wash your robot, especially not with water. Now, lots of different brands will have their machines rated to a certain IP or IPX rating, and generally speaking, well, not generally speaking, all these robots are going to be weatherproof to a degree. They're going to be rainproof, but that is generally from the top down. Underneath and water coming with force from underneath is much more likely to be able to go past any sort of seals or gaskets and cause damage from water ingress inside. And like with anything electronic, ingress of water to where it shouldn't be can be absolutely devastating. It can cause corrosion, and it can really kill a machine quite quickly. I would personally say, regardless of anything of what a manufacturer says, I wouldn't apply water to a robot lawnmower at all, especially not from underneath. You see lots and lots of advertisements and pictures of people picking their lawnmower up and hosing it down underneath. And every time I see them, I just think, that's terrible, terrible advice, because you're much better off cleaning the underside of a robot lawnmower with a stiff brush, just to remove any sort of caked on or dried on grass clippings, and then maybe you wipe it down with a damp cloth. But I would say, If you're asking me if you should wash your robot, I'd say absolutely not. Don't get a hose out and hose it down, or definitely not a pressure washer or anything like that. But I think introducing any water with any force, especially from underneath the robot, is a terrible, terrible idea. What happens to your robot lawnmower in winter? When it starts to get cold, when the grass sort of stops growing, and that can change every year. Sometimes it's as late as December if we get a really, really mild sort of end of autumn into winter. Sometimes it's early in November. But when the grass sort of stops growing and the mower doesn't need to go out as regularly, then you might want to think about putting it into winter storage. What you will do, generally speaking, is charge up the mower. There's a lot of debate on sort of battery chemistry and what the best charge state to have a lithium-ion battery in storage is. The absolute, my understanding anyway, and I don't profess to be a chemist or an absolute expert in battery systems. The optimal charge state of a lithium-ion battery for long storage is about 70%. That said, for the application that we're working with, just charging the machine up and making sure it is charged is going to be fine for what we need. Because if a battery is left to discharge and it discharges to the point where it's empty, a battery cell will continue to discharge after that, and that is where you can get serious damage to battery cells. If you've ever had a piece of equipment that's got a lithium-ion battery and it's been left for a really long time and it just doesn't work at all, that's almost certainly what's happened. The battery has continued to discharge while in storage, has over discharged, and then the BMS board, the battery management system, has the voltage of the cells is too low for it to regulate a current coming into them to charge them at all, and that is usually why a lithium-ion battery dies, for want of a better word. Charge the battery up, take it off the charging station, turn it off, and then bring it indoors. And I say bring it indoors because lithium-ion batteries do not like being at extreme temperatures. They don't like being at temperatures above 35 degrees for Celsius for long periods of time, or below freezing for long periods of time. In the UK, we don't tend to get extended periods of over 35 degrees Celsius, so that's fine. But over winter, when it is regularly freezing and it is below freezing for long periods, if your mower is outside, then that is going to cause the battery cells to drain faster, and that's going to do damage to it. So if a robot lawnmower, charged or not, is left outside over winter, almost certainly when you come to it in spring to try and use it again, that battery is going to be dead, and it may be to the point where it's not recoverable. So that is what you can do at home. The best thing you can do, as well as doing that and storing it correctly, so if you have a local dealer or a central servicing location that can do a winter service on your machine, that's really, really good practice too. So while there's not necessarily as much to do as internally as there is on a petrol engine when you do a full service on it, the reality is these machines rack up hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of operation in a year. So monitoring, diagnostics, looking at wear on motors, lubricating any areas that need it is really, really key to giving your machine a really long service life. And also, a robot mower service, a lot of it is a really intensive clean. I wouldn't recommend sort of trying to strip down and do an intensive internal clean of a robot lawnmower yourself necessarily. You'll almost certainly avoid your warranty, for one. But there's a lot of delicate ribbon cables usually. So if you take off like the top cover of it, there'll be a delicate cable that connects the top cover to the main board and things like that. But a clean of these machines is quite important as well, because these machines pick up a lot of grass clippings, a lot of debris, and things like that build over it. You'd be astounded as well the amount of insects that can get inside lawnmowers, especially with large sort of cavernous sort of internal bits where everything's not necessarily sealed 100%. In our workshop, we'll see lots of robots with ants, spiders, or things like that inside them. And while that won't necessarily do damage to the machine, it is always good to have that cleaned out so you don't get a build up of anything inside the robot and it keeps running smoothly. How do I decide which robot lawnmower is best for me? That's a very, very big question, and I'll try and pare that down to the simplest questions you should ask yourself when you're looking at your garden and which machine is going to be suitable for it. The number one thing is area. How big is your lawn? Most robot lawnmowers, they're going to measure their area in meters squared, or rather the specification will be in how many meters squared it can cover. So the best thing you can do, you can sort of pace it out and try and work it out that way. But the best thing to do is go on something like Google Maps or something similar where you can get a satellite view of your property. And usually a service like that will have an inbuilt method where you can right click and then measure, so click on points and then measure an area. And usually if you complete those points on a map, then you'll get the area size in meters squared. This doesn't have to be exact, just enough to give you a rough idea of where you're looking. If you sort of say to yourself, "Oh, I've got an acre," a lot of people I talk to that say they have an acre don't have an acre at all. They've got close to 1,000 square meters, or maybe the whole plot is an acre, but obviously the house is on it, so the area to mow is much less. So that means that they don't have to spend quite as much money as they initially thought they did. But that is the key thing to know going into the purchase of a robot lawnmower is how big is my lawn? So and then based on that, how quickly do I want the mower to cover it? How many times am I happy for it to go out and mow each week? And what's going to be best for me? The next consideration would be what the terrain is like. So if you've got a sort of a flat, simple lawn, this is less of an issue. So if your lawn's got like lots of nice flush edges, it's not bumpy, it's not uneven, it's not got big slopes, then your choice of machines will be quite wide. However, if you've got a really steep slope or hill in your garden, it's very uneven. You tend to get lots of holes or ruts in it. You might need to look at something a bit more robust that's got better grip in its wheels, stronger drive, a higher slope tolerance. You might need to look at something that's all-wheel drive that's going to handle that terrain a bit better. So that's the next best thing. That's the next most important thing to really consider, and that will sort of put you on the path down to which robot is right for you, what kind of machine you want, so what kind of setup you want involved in it. There are a lot of wireless machines on the market now. The technology's come on, so they are correct for most properties, but you might be in an area where it'd be really difficult for you to get satellite signal of some kind, or a boundary wire is just going to work better because of the specific layout of your garden. Those cases are becoming sort of fewer and further between as the technology moves on. But if you're ever unsure, the best thing you can do is talk to the manufacturer or the distribution or a local dealer, and have them go through that with you. For a lot of brands, your local dealership might offer site surveys or do a survey remotely where you send in pictures and they have a look at it and they use their experience to sort of recommend an appropriate machine. And I think in any cases where you're just not sure, based on all the information you've looked at, and you need something a bit more bespoke for you, that's the best way to decide. Talk to someone who's an expert who can help you. If you've made it all the way through the video, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this content and you want to see more similar or any of the other content we're putting out, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you've got any more questions that weren't covered in this video, please leave a comment below and we'll do our best to answer them either in the comments or maybe in a future video. If you want more information about the robot lawnmowers that we do as Mower Magic, there's links in the description. But if there's nothing else, thank you very much.